This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
Welcome in to Dads Watching Sports. I am Michael Draper. Thank you so much for joining us this week. As you can see, I am solo tonight in terms of my co-host is not in his co-host chair. Kyle Castles is out this week, so his wife feeling under the weather. So thoughts and prayers out to you, Lauren, and I hope you heal up. But Kyle couldn't make it in tonight, and that's perfectly all right. As I've got a great guest that I'm going to bring up here in just a minute to fill in and probably do much better would do on our show. But in all seriousness, again, Lauren, we're thinking about you and hope you feel better. I'm looking forward to a good report in the next couple of days there. But man, what a wild weekend in sports. And we'll get to a little bit of that here later on. But you guys, if you are familiar with our show and you've checked it out before, I'm a big University of Kentucky fan. The Cats just crushed Kansas at the Phog on Saturday night. It was an amazing win. Kentucky looking like a title contender, which is something that I'm very excited about. Rafi Nadal, just dramatic fashion in the Australian Open, won his 21st Grand Slam title. The Bengals, Houday, they are in the Super Bowl, go into the Super Bowl with a huge upset win over the Kansas City Chiefs. It looks like I'm kind of keeping up with the NFC Championship game right now. It looks like the LA Rams just took a 3-point lead with 1:46 left. The big comeback there by the Rams. So just a wild weekend so far in sports. Looks like we're going to have another fantastic finish in a championship game today. And probably the coolest thing I did all weekend was I took my son to Monster Jam. So I'll talk about that here in a few minutes with our guest. But we are really excited to have a guest on with us this week, as we do most every week. His name is Jacob Scrimpshire. Jacob is he's a graduate of Belmont University, which is here in Nashville. Go Bruins. He's got his master's degree in divinity from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and he's currently the discipleship pastor at Rolling Hills Community Church in Franklin, which I can personally endorse because my wife and I have been going there for the past couple of years. He's married. He's got 3 boys and then a new baby girl, and I can vouch for him. He is an all-around great guy. Jacob, welcome to Dad's Watch. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. Glad to be here, man. It's a great end to an awesome day.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into this kind of the topics and discussion with you, I've got to ask you, have you ever been to Monster Jam?
You know what? I have actually went to a similar, like old school Bigfoot, original Bigfoot when I was a kid in Mississippi. Yeah. I went to that. But I have not taken my kids to Monster Jam yet. They've asked about it. We haven't taken that step yet, but I mean, I want to hear about your experience. I mean, I remember when I went, it was all kinds. It took all kinds there in Mississippi in the 80s for the Bigfoot show. So what was it like for you, man?
Yeah. I think that's a great way to describe it. It was pretty cool. My son, so Hayden, he's 3 years old. He loves trucks. Kyle, who's normally our co-host tonight, he texted me earlier this morning and said, "Hey man, I've got a couple extra tickets. Would you guys want to go?" So we ended up going. And it's really cool. I would definitely, no matter how old your kids are, I would make sure you have, because it is really loud, like really, really loud, especially inside. But it also 1 o'clock. And for those of us with young kids, usually 1 to anywhere from 12 to 3 o'clock is usually kind of nap time. For most young kids. And so we skipped nap today, and Hayden was awesome at the very beginning. Like he was loving it. Well, then they go through this like intermission period where they have to like set up a new thing because they also have some BMX bikers. And so they had this big ramp for them to be able to jump off of. And when things slowed down, little man got a little tired, ended up falling asleep in my lap. Luckily, he had the headphones on. And so while it was fun, I will warn you that the waking up of him as we were leaving and having to walk out of a huge arena with probably 7,000 or 8,000 people there with a screaming 3-year-old because I just woke him up from the middle of a nap was not entertaining.
it was a monster jam in itself that you had a whole different competition.
Yes, it was an absolute monster jam, and I'm sure everyone that was around us really that. But again, thanks for joining us here this week. I'm really excited to chat with you. I know you. We've met a couple of times and we go to church together, so I know this. But for our listeners out there, tell us just a little bit about your backstory and kind of specifically how you got into your role of ministry.
Yeah, man, I'd love to. I remember one time when I was in high school, we were around the lunch table, and I remember people saying, "Hey, what they were going to do when they graduated high school." And I remember saying, like, I had this weird inclination, like and saying it out loud. I was like, I think I'm gonna go to seminary. And I remember the audible laughter of the people at the table, you in seminary. And I was like, I remember going, yeah, that is crazy. Y'all right. I'm not gonna do that because, like my backstory is I didn't really grow up in church,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't, the trajectory, a lot of people you meet in seminary, their dad was a pastor or they have some track that led them to the path of being a pastor. I really didn't have that. My dad was an engineer, kind of a inventor guy, so like there was not that track there. But for me, my path led me, towards where I got to a place where I was in my mid-20s and I'd been living a really hard life. I kind of explained to where short story is, by the time I got to my 20s, I felt like I was wearing a backpack filled with bricks. I had the weight of all these poor decisions in my life, and if you would have asked me at that time if I was a believer, I would have said yes, because when I was 14, I had prayed a prayer, but there was really no change in my life. I still was, all the things that God wants to be in our heart, the hole that he put in our heart for us, I was filling it with drugs, alcohol, relationships, all these things. And I remember somebody telling me, hey man, you need Jesus. And I was like, no, I did that. I prayed that prayer, but it wasn't until my mid-20s where I felt like I had that weight on my back and I couldn't go any further. And I remember waking up one morning and I was like, I'm either going to die today or something's going to change. And that's when I truly met Jesus for the first time. And I remember like of hearing the word grace growing up, but I never really understood what that meant until that moment, because I knew the list of all those things that I had done up to this point, and if I was like, hey, Michael, could you list out a couple of things you think I did? I'm gonna go ahead and say I probably did those things. And
as we all probably have. Yeah.
Well, tell me those specific things that you did, Michael.
That's right. Well, this is a family show, so we'll. But if Kyle was on here, he would be able to listen because he was there with me, and he was probably the one saying like, Michael, we probably shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And as the pastor's kid, I was like, no, let's absolutely do this. So.
Oh man, but yeah, I really knew what grace was at that point because I knew what had been forgiven, and I really felt God impress on me that now that you understand grace, spend the rest of your life preaching that gospel of grace. And so simultaneously, my salvation was my call into ministry. And, it's funny because I really didn't know what to do and I didn't know what that meant. So the only thing I knew to do was there's two things I did. I went to church the next Sunday and sat on the back row of a church with the Bible and was just like, okay, here we go. And I remember people trying to talk to me and I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm just one step at a time.
Sure.
And then I went to Goodwill and basically bought all the Christian books that I could get my hands on and went home and just started reading them and reading the Bible, reading it. And I was like, well, this doesn't sound right. That's not right. And read book. And I just started studying. I just got hungry and was starting to read. And, through some wise counsel of some people I reached out to, they were like, because when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college. I was just working full time right out of high school. I dabbled with community college a couple of times in there, but dabble was probably the best word that came from it. But just through some wise counsel was like, hey, why don't you go to Bible college? So I decided to, find the best program I could with the name Bible college because I'm a real literal guy. So I was like, okay, where's the school with Bible college? And I was living in Mississippi at the time, and I moved up here to go to what was Free Will Baptist Bible College. At the time, it's Welch College now. So I did that for a year. And then eventually transferred to Belmont to finish my degree.
Yeah.
But long story short, while simultaneously going to school there at Belmont, I was doing a internship, and just kind of as I was going to school, working full time, going to school full time, basically at night most of the time at Belmont. I would working during the day, going to school at night. Just balancing those things, getting ministry experience while getting the education at the same time, because I was kind of later in my 20s when I started college. So I was the old guy in the classes who pretended to be the young guy. Yeah, guys, that's hip. That's cool. And they're like, we know you're old, bro. Don't pretend.
That's right. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, that's cool to hear. And I feel like, that's something that, we hear a lot, and I think is even more, I don't want to say accepted, but like you just hear that a lot through both individuals that serve in a role like the one you're in, and individuals that just kind of came around, that had a much different start than someone who was just in church their whole life and kind of felt that calling. So that's really cool to hear that story, and I'm glad you shared that with us. So tell us a little bit about, this is Dad's Watching Sports. So tell us a little bit about family and life. I know it has changed significantly for you guys over the past couple of months, but talk about family life there in the Scrimpshire household.
Man, it is. I was actually preaching this morning at our Nashville campus, and I was preaching on mental health, and I was explaining to him that I had 4 kids, and I'm pretty sure that's why they had me teach on mental health. Either because questioning my decision to have 4 kids, or because of the effect that 4 kids has had on me, but it's kind of funny. When somebody asked me this week, it was like, don't you get tired of all the noise with all the kids? I have 2 kids, you have 4 kids. And it's kind of like when you hear the refrigerator humming, eventually you don't hear it humming anymore.
Yeah.
It's just part of the noise. It's the white noise. Where it's become part of the white noise. You begin to love it, because like when it snowed this last time, I was at home by myself for like 3 days. My family was in Mississippi and I was here. And day 1, I was like, yes, I got some time. After that first day, I was like, where's the noise? Where's the people? I want my people back,
All right.
So, we love it. We have a good time. I have a 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old. And then this week we'll be celebrating our daughter's 3-month birthday. So we're already flying, I feel like, with the 4 kids, but it's been really sweet. The boys have really, since the day she came home, was like, hey, her name's May. Where's May? I want to see May before we go to bed. I want to see May when they wake up. And I know it won't always be like that, but it's really a sweet time right now where they're really taking care of her. Hopefully they'll continue to do that. But it's been great.
So you've got, she's the baby of the family. She's the only girl. I mean, like you stand no chance, right? Like you stand absolutely no chance here.
Right when she was born, I already bought her a car. I didn't know why. I was like, here's the keys. I don't know why, but here you go. I love you. It is weird though, like, because I've had the 3 boys. I can't pretend like I know what I'm doing with the boys, but I feel like I know what I'm doing better. And I wasn't sure what to expect with a girl, but as soon as she's in your arms, you're automatically like, oh, I know what to do. I know what to do. I love her. I'm gonna care for her. I'm a protector. I feel like I've always done it. I know there's gonna be some times when I absolutely don't feel that way, but at this moment, I'm like, man, like when it's just me and her, like we were earlier today, Shannon and I were doing something, and she started crying, so I took her away and just spent some time with her, and it's just so special, that moments with dad and daughter. It just feels, I can't explain it. It just feels different than dad and son. There's no words to put to it.
It absolutely does. I actually had one of those moments today. So after we got home from Monster Jam, I passed the son off to my wife and said, "Hey, Emma, our daughter who's 5." I said, "Let's go walk the dog around the neighborhood." And so we were gone for probably half an hour, and our kids stayed at my in-laws' house last night because we went out with some friends, and just catching up with her about, like, how was your day? And we have a little baby in our family on that side of the family. And she got to spend a lot of time with her. And she's, as any girl is at her age, she's all about baby dolls and wanting to be a mommy. And so she got to hold the baby. So we spent, literally about 30 minutes just walking around with our dog, just talking about, everything she'd been doing the past couple of days and how she was doing and what was new in school and all this. And it's precious moments. There's no doubt about it. It almost makes you get a little emotional even thinking about it. But you have had to make that shift from boy dad to now boy and girl dad. So how is that going? How have you been able to balance that out a little bit?
No, it's been good. Like at first I couldn't imagine pink in my house.
Yeah.
But it's been a great transition. Like I'm a bow fan now. I didn't think I'd be a bow fan. I was like, Shannon, why don't she got a bow on? Like I feel like we have to extreme differentiate between the boys and the girls. It's like, so like I've become the bow dad.
Oh yeah.
So
there's a bow for every occasion too.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. And what's weird is like growing up, I had an older sister. My dad traveled a lot for work. So I was with my mom, I was with my aunt. Most of my cousins were female. So I was surrounded by females most of my life. So once we had the boys, like the boy part was actually like, yeah, I've wanted this my whole life. I always wanted brothers. Here we go. I got all of this. And then now it's like, I do kind of know this because I was kind of raised by majority females around. So part of that's triggering in is so we've been sewing together. We went to it's funny when I was growing up, my mom, the reason I say sewing is because my mom and my aunt, they would threaten when I'd get in trouble to take me to the fabric store that they went to all the time. So, but I found a way to like the fabric store because they have the pattern books of all the superheroes. So I would, you always got to find a way to survive in those kind of situations.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Between the superheroes or the sports team.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. That's where you got to gravitate towards that.
100% until I would say, hey, this looks cool. And then my aunt or my mom would, make something for me and then expect me to wear that to school and not, but that's what toughens you up, wearing homemade clothes to school.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, one thing that I really appreciate about Rolling Hills, our church is intentionality that's put into to dads and men and being leaders and really all facets. We had the Versus conference back in the fall where Mike Fisher, a national comedian, came and spoke and gave their testimony. And it was just a really great time for men just to come together. And we had the Men's Leadership Network that you're a big part of as well. So talk a little bit about just kind of why our church, Rolling Hills specific, like it sees it as such a huge investment need to invest in men as dads and leaders.
Yeah, man. Cause first of all, Versus was an awesome conference. We got the details for Versus 2 coming out soon.
Nice.
Cinco de Mayo is the date. So
nice.
We got the date on that. We got some really cool things that we'll be able to release shortly about some of the speakers coming to that.
That's great.
But man, just for me personally, the way I see it is, dads are the front lines of homes,
Mm-hmm.
We're called to be the spiritual leaders in our homes. And if we can invest in dad, we get dads, we get the home, because, in my role, I get to oversee men's and women's ministry, with some awesome people that run each one, and people say like, women's ministry, they're just so excited to be there. Like you do anything, they're coming 100%. They're all in. Men, it takes a lot more work to get them excited about things, to get them to say, I'm going to put aside this and make this a priority, so it's
Sure.
harder work. But I think the fruit at the end of the other side, it could be generational changes for the kingdom, because, so many times and you see, almost every book on the shelf when you read, there's a spot where it's like, where's the father wound? And how we process and through father wounds we would possibly have. So what if we pour into men in such a way that we minimize these father wounds, instead have place where next generations are growing up saying, hey, how did you get to where you are? Well, because my dad invested in me, because my dad was pouring into me, not because my dad wasn't there is why I'm struggling.
Yeah.
So that's just a microcosm of why men, fatherhood is so important. Plus, I mean, we live in a generation where, we'd be hard pressed to define together, hey, what is a real man?
Sure.
So what can we do biblically to help define what a real man is and what that looks like, even if you're a single man, but also in the home? What's it look like to be a real man and lead a family well? Because there's so much confusion about what that is. Is it a successful person? Is it somebody, a CEO running a company, making lots of money, but never sees their kids? Or is it a man who leads his family well?
Yeah.
So helping to be a voice of clarity of what a biblical man looks like, I think is super important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It definitely is. We had a guest join us 2 weeks ago, Jared Lopes, who's the founder of Dad Tired, and he talked a lot about servant leadership in the home, and just again how important it is for that dad role. And you see that, I mean, across the world, not only in just in our communities of when there is an absence of a dad, whether it be physically someone not there or emotionally, or just in any facet, it can play a huge toll, especially on young men. So I give you guys kudos for identifying that and trying to invest as much time, energy, and effort that you can into the men in our community. With the Men's Leadership Network, I think it's every Friday y'all send out a new kind of newsletter email. And end of last year, you wrote an article titled "Don't Parent on Accident." Really, really interesting article. But I wonder if you could just share maybe like either the Cliff Notes version or just like one or two points from that of what you meant, like don't parent on accident.
Yeah, man. So when you think about it, like a lot of times, you've heard the phrase more is caught than taught,
Right.
So a lot of times when we're just trying to survive through the day, get to the end of the day. Okay. We made it, got them in bed. We did our thing. Whew, which, I just did that moments ago before I came home here. We got them all in bed. And then you get to the next day and you do the same thing and you do the same thing. And then next thing you turn around, they're 18 years old and you're like, well, we survived, but how did I intentionally lead them forward to be strong men of God, strong women of God? Maybe they caught some of it, but how did I intentionally lead them? Sometimes they catch the good stuff. They see you loving your wife well. They see you helping a neighbor. They catch some of the stuff because that we want that to be the holistic picture of who we are. So they do catch us and they see us and we lead by example.
Sure.
But also at the same time, like, what is the end result we want for our kids? It's easy to say, yeah, we want them to go to college. We want them to be successful. We want them to have family. Yeah, that's awesome. But if I told you, hey, your kid's not going to be a doctor, but he's going to look a lot like Jesus, would we be okay with that?
Oh, sure.
And that's the whole thing is like, can we be okay with that and let that be our primary focus for our kids? Is like helping them be like Jesus, help no matter what they do. And a lot of times, this, we'll struggle as dads. Hey, this is what I want them to do. And they're like, God made them totally different, made it a little bit like us, but a lot like them.
Yeah.
And they're going to go down their path. And our job really is not to pick the path, but to prepare them for their path. And the best thing we could do is intentionally have a plan for them to look like Jesus. Like, for example, with my kids, I got with three boys, they're getting older. It'd be harder for me to sit back. It'd be easy for me to parent on accident and just say, okay, here's what happened. Instead, I have to have an intentional plan for each one of them. Each one of them is made so different. My oldest is a feeler. My middle one is more independent, but he's also kind of artistic. And, my youngest is just a hardhead that run through a wall, and they need a different type of plan. I have to be intentional of saying, okay, this is how I get Jude to his next step of manhood. This is where Abe needs to go. This is where Zeke needs to go. And just being intentional about having the one-on-one times with them, but also doing things together that's also leading them to the place of, because, at the end of the day, parenting is preparing to kick them out of the nest and them survive without them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Whatever that looks like. But the biggest thing I want them to have is I want them to love like Jesus. I want them to be like Jesus. I want them to make wise decisions like Jesus. So the intentionality comes from just having a plan for them. And have you seen King Richard?
I have not, but I've heard great things.
When in King Richard for Serena and Venus, the whole time, Will Smith keeps saying, I have a plan. I have a plan. And his plan was for them to be professional tennis players, to be the best in the world, and kind of what I said in the article was, well, we got to have a plan too. but it's not the end result of what they are. It's who they are when they do it. So,
Sure.
and that's really what it comes down to me is who can I help them be?
Yeah.
So,
well, and to your point, I think the thing that is so difficult with that, or the biggest challenge of that is, two things. One, it is so difficult to really say, like, here's the plan that I have for you, but this is the plan that you have to ultimately walk, and I can't walk it for you. Like, that is so tough to as a parent, to remove yourself and not to want to push too much.
yeah.
And then having multiple, knowing that no matter, even if they were, same gender or even close to same age, like that, those two plans are going to look so different because of different personalities, different ways that the kids interact. Everything about their personality is just going to be so different. We went through a phase with both kids around 3.5, where they just had just awful sleep regression. Had been great sleepers, and then they both just at one point or another would not want to go to bed, wouldn't stay in the room, would not sleep well, would not let us shut their door, wake up multiple times. And our daughter, Emma, who's 5, she is the person, like, if you give her a task, or if you say, hey, we will mark off this, we'll create a chart, we'll mark it off every time you sleep through the night, you get a prize at the end. She thrives on that. Like, that is her wheelhouse. She wants to mark things off. She's an achiever. She wants to do those types of things. Hayden, our son, wants nothing to do that. We could offer him anything and everything in the world to say, if you just sleep in your bed one night, we'd buy you a car, and he could care less. And so we have to have different approaches on simply just that path. So I can't even imagine what that path is going to look like. But it's, that's why we get the big bucks, right?
Right. Exactly. And when you think about it may be like, there may be a dad listening to this, or like, so I have to write out a whole plan for my kids. And I'm like, no, if that is you, if you're a planner, go ahead and do that, and have, at 14, we're going to do this, have these rites of passage. There's a lot of great resources out there that helps with putting those plans together. But what I really mean is always having eyes open to hinge moments and teaching moments with our kids, of these hinge points where it's an open door to teach them how to be a man or how to be a woman of God, and taking advantage of those moments. Because a lot of times in those hard points, we're struggling to do the Jesus thing in those moments. And it's really hard to teach them to do the Jesus thing. So the first thing about parenting is working on our own heart, and then we can help mold the hearts of our kids, but also seeing moments to where seeing everything as an opportunity for growth, and not like, man, why are they acting like this? Well, how can I jump in here and help them learn from this and grow from it? And we're growing from it too,
absolutely.
Like at times we're allowing them to lose, and we want to swoop in and help them win. I mean, this is kind of a literal illustration, but I was coaching my oldest in 9-10 baseball last year, and he's pitching, and I know, like, he's about to lose this game, and in my heart, I'm going to pull him out, put somebody else in, but I was like, I need to let him lose this game. Little did I know that we were going to lose a lot of games. So we would have a lot of learning experience. But, it
was like you all learned from that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But, and then afterwards, I knew he's a feeler. I knew how he was going to feel afterwards, but to be able to come in there and say, Jude, this is, in life, we're going to have a lot of losses, but how we respond to it, how we get up from the loss is what Christ wants us to do. He wants us to come back stronger and learn from this moment. He didn't hear it then. And that's the thing that is hard for us as parents to realize is we may not think they're hearing it, but they're hearing it.
Oh yeah.
Because we're always collecting images and ideas about the way the world works, and they're just filing in a way to where it's gonna come back without them self-consciously knowing it, that we're investing in them in this way. They may not spit it back out tomorrow to their friend, like, well, we need to learn from these losses. But I wish that's what it was, but they're learning, they're gaining that type of wisdom through
absolutely.
intentionality.
Oh yeah, and through repetition of those things as well. I mean, that like you said, just those little seeds that get that becomes habits, or becomes just kind of a way of thinking going forward. So I talked about this earlier about servant leadership, and that's something we talk a lot about on this this podcast with a lot of our guests. So what does that mean to you to be kind of a servant leader as a husband, a dad, a leader in your church, and in any or all of those roles?
Yeah. And I think maybe this is just a struggle for me, and it's just confession time. It's really hard you work all day and you've given it your all at work, and then you immediately have to come home and do your second job, which is be a husband and a dad. And it'd be very easy to say, well, this is the most important one because this is what makes the money. This is what keeps the lights on. This is what feeds the family. They should just be appreciative of that. And I can just come home and do whatever I want to, can selflessly go to the couch or go to the TV or whatever it is, the thing that I most want to do after a full day of work. And I remember hearing a pastor say years ago, and it really stuck with me. When you get home, get off the couch and get on the floor. And, it really stuck with me. It means multiple things to where when you come home, you're actually going towards your most important job, which, my most important job is not discipleship pastor of Rolling Hills, which I love my job, but my most important job is discipleship pastor of this home. And, so, the hard part is, how do you transition your heart from being tired to being selfish, to want to do those things, to instead turn into a servant and come into home and say, okay, how do I serve these people?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the answer is fully the power of Christ alone to help me do those things.
No doubt.
I literally, and I live so close to the church, so it's a little harder. So that I leave the church 2 minutes later, I'm in my driveway. So there's not really a transition time.
Yeah.
So I have to either drive around the neighborhood one time just to kind of take a deep breath, to transition my mind from work, to get it ready to come in the home, or I'll sit in the car for a moment and just pray and say, Lord, I know I'm tired. I gave it all here. Help me to give it all when I go in here. And sometimes, and Shanna, my wife, Shanna, she knows, is like, sometimes I'll say, hey, I'm gonna go change clothes real quick. And it gives me just an extra 5 minutes to take a deep breath, prepare, kind of get my energy back up, and then come be the dad that those kids need me to be. And I really think that's a picture of selfless leadership, because in servant leadership is because, like we said, as we're building habits in them and they're seeing, we're teaching them how to be a dad. We're teaching them not to withdraw into, a place of their own, to where, because we know that, like, when we look at a picture of, or as we're trying to build our relationship with our Father in heaven, most of what our images and ideas come from our earthly father.
Sure.
And if our dad is more distant and focused on the things that he needs to do, like, hey, we're not going to bother him. We'll only bother him when it's the big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my kids to ever look at me like that. I want them to come to me with everything. Because if they only come to me with the big stuff, what happens when that medium stuff comes and they're afraid to come to me? So really I really think that, specifically for being a dad, that servant leadership comes from just the way you carry yourself in the home, of serving. You're serving your kids, but you're also teaching them to serve each other. You're serving your spouse, but also just the minimal things, the kind of blowing your neighbor's yard off for them when they're not home. It's like, hey, Dad, why'd you do that? Because we should be caring for each other. Just small moments of modeling that. But it really comes down to that every day of what it looks like coming through the door. And, there's days, I'm not here saying I do that perfectly every single day.
Sure.
But, it's just that you increasingly give that intentional effort to model that servant leadership at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you just said at the end is so crucial. Like we none of us are perfect. We know there's only been one perfect person in the history of the world, and we are not him. And so there are definitely those times where I think of an example is, and this is something so small, minuscule, but every night when it's bedtime, like one or both of our kids ask me to, like, hey, Dad, can I ride on your shoulders going up the stairs? Or can I sit on your back? Or can you hold us? And usually I'll try to do it more often than not, but there are just some nights where I'm just like, guys, like, come on, let's just get upstairs. I'm tired. Can we please just do that? and I can't remember what medium this was on. It may have been like a Facebook video or something. I saw some video probably 2 weeks ago where it was a very similar situation of it was a dad and the daughter had asked him to do that. Like, hey, can I sit on your shoulders to go up the stairs? And he said, and I said, yes, every time. But there was going to be one time when she stopped asking. And I was just like, oh, like right here. Like, okay, every time now I've got to say hello. I've got to say yes, because there's going to be a day when they stop asking to do that.
Yeah, in fact, I got to go back up to my kid's room real quick and take care of some things because you just convicted me.
I know, right? Yeah,
I hate those stories. What if it's the last time? I know. But it's true. It's true because eventually, man, they're gonna be too old. They're not even gonna want to talk to us anymore. At some point, they're just gonna go to their room and close the door. I mean, we're not there yet. That's why we got to get it all as much as we can in now. And
yes. Yep. No, absolutely. And it's always those things that hit home and you're just like, oh man, like that was a dad fail there. Well, let's, for the last few minutes here, let's shift gears to the sports world. I know you're a big sports fan, and spoiler alert, the Rams beat the 49ers 20-17. So we have got a Super Bowl, which I'm sure everyone had at the beginning of the year, Rams and Bengals. And I'm not going to let you off the hook. Before the show is over with, I'm going to ask you your pick for the Super Bowl. So I'll give you a minute to think.
Hey, on the record, I picked before the season, I picked Rams Bills for Super Bowl.
Okay, nice.
So I got half of it right, and I was almost there with the Bills if the overtime rules weren't so terrible. And
I know, right?
I think it would be.
You're definitely a little prophetic there in some of those picks. So I know, you and I've talked about this before. I know it has been it's been a big sports year, or last year, I guess technically was for you on the baseball diamond. Mississippi State fan. Finally, the Bulldogs got over the hump.
I was ready
and won the national championship, winning the College World Series. So. Kyle, who normally co-hosts the show with me, is a big Mississippi State guy. I graduated from there. We both grew up in Mississippi as well. So just really cool to see. But walk us through what the run to Omaha was like for you going through that.
Man, being a Mississippi State fan my whole life, like I didn't graduate from Mississippi State. My wife did, but when you're born in Mississippi, you have to decide Mississippi State or Ole Miss, right? When you're born. And I chose Mississippi State. And over the years, there hasn't been a ton to celebrate as a Mississippi State fan. You have your Independence Bowls here and there, Final Four run, 1 year magical run, but there hasn't been at the same time, my whole life I've been a Detroit Lions fan. So, and when you grow up in Mississippi, everybody's a Saints fan. And as a Rebel playing Tecmo Bowl with Barry Sanders, I was like, Detroit, that's my, I was like, and then my mom brought home a Detroit Lions starter jacket. Then it was confirmed Lions fan. There was no turning back at that point. So like in my sports, I've played sports my whole life, love sports. I've never had a ton to celebrate, never even really a title to celebrate. So like this year was like, it was just such a special thing to watch it happen. The whole time as a Mississippi State fan, I'm also thinking this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen.
Oh, yeah, right.
The whole time because I've been hurt before. I know how this goes. And then when it did, I mean, it was just – and the coolest thing was like my oldest son who's getting into sports, like watching it with him, my wife, watching together as a family and watching it. Like when we were on vacation, win the national championship, and we were all watching it together and it just being a family memory. But at the same time, like it felt amazing. It was so awesome, but also like, I love it. It's the greatest sports memory that I can remember is watching it happen. But at the same time, being there with my family was actually a bigger deal to me than the actual national championship because it was there and it was gone. Now it's all of a sudden, now we're defending the national title again,
right?
Not the run to it, but the run to it was amazing. I loved it. I can't even, I've never been so excited running around the house, with the Texas game. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Just all those last inning games. It was just a great run. And this weekend had the first starting practice this weekend. So the run continues this year. So
that's right. Now the title defense begins. Absolutely. That's always fun. Well, you mentioned your oldest is getting into sports, and you talked about coaching. I'm guessing it was him in baseball as well. So what does that look like from a dad's perspective of trying? Are you making sure that they wear maroon every Friday, or are you really pushing them towards the Bulldogs, or are you just kind of like, hey, you know what, whatever sport you want to play, whatever team you want to choose for, they have a lot of teams to choose it here in Nashville. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm definitely not pushing any of my teams on them, and with the Lions, once I turned 40, I was like, you guys have broke my heart so many times. I'm going to have to let you go. I live in Nashville now. I'm going to fully commit to the Titans. I still stalk them on ESPN, see what they're doing, but I'm not going to let them break my heart anymore. So I've fully gone on the Titans, and I think they probably lost to the Bengals because I joined.
Yeah.
I joined the crew. So I'm letting them choose their own teams. All of them are really liking the Titans. My oldest son asked for a Steph Curry jersey for Christmas, which I'm not a big Steph Curry fan myself, so I had to swallow. Like, okay, if you like him, then we'll get you the jersey. I kind of think he ruined the game of basketball a little bit, to where all 3-pointers, everybody just shooting from half court all the time. You go to a high school game, everybody just launching it. I'm more of the old school guy. Feed it into Patrick Ewing underneath, the big guy.
NBA. Yeah.
But it's funny, I'll play the game on the Switch, the NBA game with my son Jude, and he'll just light me up with Steph Curry just bombing threes all the time. It makes me so mad. I'm playing with the legend Lakers, feeding it to Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay,
he's still beating me. But when it comes to who they're cheering for, I let them just go wherever they want to. But when it comes to playing sports, I've really been trying to. Baseball is what they've kind of honed in on, basketball and baseball, and we play golf together too because I love golf and they get something that we can do together. But I'm not gonna I play baseball more than any other sport, but I'm really letting them say, hey, what do you love doing? Because we're not gonna spend time doing it if you don't love doing it. And we're kind of still figuring that out now so far. So last year I coached my oldest in baseball and my middle child in baseball at the same time, which was by the way, not a great decision to coach 2 teams at once.
Speaking of that mental health sermon that you had this morning.
But we loved being at the baseball field because, we could either be here arguing about if they can play video games or out there playing sports together. So, but, I'm my oldest. I'm going to let him go without me. I'm not going to coach in his league. I'm going to coach my middle son because he's probably the one I spend less time with. So it's a way for me to invest with him in that time. But watching sports together, anytime I can, to where it's a moment like Mississippi State going to the College World Series, or like yesterday when the Farmers Insurance was coming down to the last couple of holes, I basically said, kids, stop what you're doing. Let's watch this together. They were all in, wife's there, baby's there, and we all watched Zalatoris miss that last putt right there. So we watch the Masters together. We try to find moments. I don't try to force them to watch all the little moments, but we were watching the Chiefs-Bengals game together as a family. Hey, let's get these memorable moments and try to, build in family time together with those moments. Because, if you try to do it every week, they'll begin to hate it because you're forcing them to do it. So,
for sure.
I try to build in okay, here's the big moments that we're going to say, hey, I remember watching that with my dad when that happened.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so we've tried to take a couple of sporting events. This past year, we went to a UK football game. We've taken them to a UK women's basketball game when they played at Vandy, and to a couple of different sporting. I took my son, actually. I think he had just turned 1. He was 1.5. I took him to the Music City Bowl in 2019, I guess it was, State in Louisville.
Yeah.
It was a little cold for the little guy, but he had a good time nonetheless. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see them get excited about sports. Our daughter played soccer for the first time this fall, realized it was not for her, but I will say with the girls, so gymnastics and dance, just watch out. You will find yourself at a practice for one of those in the next couple of years for sure.
Well, I've already bought her golf club. So is that,
oh yeah,
I know I said I can't pick what they're going to do.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, Jacob, man, thanks so much for your time. Before we let you go, I've got to ask you again. Okay. You got Rams and Bengals, 2 weeks Super Bowl. It's in LA. So for the second time ever, and we're second year back to back, a team is playing in their home stadium. playing the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay did it last year. You got Matthew Stafford in the Rams, or is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and that crew going to keep the hot streak running? And you're taking the Bengals.
Well, man, Stafford being with the Lions for so long, I really wanted to do well. I've been pulling for him. But the Bengals, man, I think the Rams are a better team than the Bengals, but I think the Bengals are just the team of destiny. It seems like they're going to continue it. I hope Stafford gets that Super Bowl after so many horrible years in Detroit. He deserves where at least to get to the Super Bowl like they are. But man, it's gonna be hard to pick against the Bengals, man. I'm gonna have to go Bengals with the championship.
There we go. The Who Dey Nation, something to get excited about.
SEC quarterbacks, awesome. Georgia versus LSU, man.
That's
SEC
right.
On top.
Of course, as it always is. So, Jacob, again, thanks so much for joining us this week on Dad's Watching Sports. It's great to chat with you and appreciate you sharing all you and everything about dad life. And we definitely enjoyed having you on with us.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you having me, man. Absolutely.
We will be back in 2 weeks, Super Bowl Sunday. Got a great interview. We've actually already recorded it. We're going to release it that Sunday with Damon West, Mr. B. A. Coffee Bean. It's a great interview. I definitely encourage you to check that out. But we will see you then. Super Bowl Sunday. Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all take care.